let me start with that point you made to us around loneliness, and the way in which community and social participation funding combats loneliness. Tell us a bit more about what that looks like.
Yeah, so for people with intellectual disability, isolation and loneliness is profound. It relies on an ability to interact either with your community or the people around you. Without an ability to do that through whether it's social and community participation, I think too the term social is a little bit misleading. I think we're probably getting caught up a little bit in terminology. I think it doesn't necessarily convey what it can do for people, as I said before. So, but social life and social connection, relationships, intimacy is all something that's very much out of reach for most people with an intellectual disability. Because again, we don't aspire for that. We don't, as a society, we tend not to recognise that people with intellectual disability have all of the same needs and wants when it comes to connection, as relationships, intimacy. And it's probably why I'll keep talking about we need to go back a step and understand what the actual principle of the scheme represented for people with intellectual disability, and that is one of those things, is better connected life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're correct that this conversation sometimes gets lost in the labels that government bureaucracy places upon pools of funding. It's so important to take us back from that. Tell us what social and community participation funding enables in your experience, in terms of the people that you represent, the tangible activities, the things that people are able to do with this funding.
Yeah, so it's been discussed, I think, at a number of previous sessions of this committee, that it can be getting to the doctor, it can be getting out in the community, it can be doing your shopping, it can be support to do things safely. As I said before, though, it's also about making connections in the community. It also relates to a broader issue that, again, relates to sustainability of the scheme. If we are ever going to get to a place where we have a truly inclusive society, society needs to be interacting and engaging and working alongside people with intellectual disability. If people aren't able to be out in the community is not going to have exposure to people with intellectual disability, and will be reliant on paid supports and support workers being the intermediary with the person with disability and the rest of the community, and moderating all of those interactions. That is not going to help society become more inclusive, and over time not be totally reliant on paid supports for people just to be able to be part of their community.
And in terms of somebody with an intellectual disability, tell us why it is so important for them to have a support worker available to help them go shopping or do any other activity within the community. How does that tangibly help for people that might not know?
Most immediately, it's safety for a lot of people, to be able to safely navigate the community. As I said before, it's the experience of intellectual disability is different for everyone. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So for some people, it might be being able to do the things they need to do in their life, but be doing it safely and doing it with a support person. For other people, it may be more pointed. It may be, as I said, very clearly about getting to doctor's appointments or other things that are life-changing. But I guess the basic way to explain it, for most people, it's about safety, to be able to be in the community. Not always, but it's different for everyone, as I said.
So it's about safety, helps them be safe, and also because they're able to get out and about more, that kind of helps tackle a bit of the loneliness and isolation that people feel.
Well, it does, and it also takes pressure off other service systems. We recently interacted with somebody who has had their funding cut in this area. They were attending a group on a Friday, a social group with peers. That they're no longer able to do that. That person is now more or less refusing to get out of bed, has hit a really significant level of depression and anxiety. that will be picked up elsewhere as well. So it's creating other issues that will get picked up, whether it's in the health system or other service jurisdictions. So it's not just about achieving that, it's also preventing negative outcomes. And I think all of us would agree that being connected socially is incredibly important for your mental health.
And for this person that you've described to us, so they've had their plan cut already. How much by?
They explained it to us. It was roughly around 50%.
Okay,
that was reported by them. We didn't verify that,
of course. But we're seeing that quite commonly. I've had lots of people share that with my office. And so now they no longer have the funding to employ the support worker or to enable a support worker to come with them to that group that they were participating in. So is there any alternative for them now?
No, not at the moment,
No.
from what we've seen.
So even if they wanted to kind of even if they weren't so impacted by this that they felt able to get out of bed and do their day, there's not really much for them beyond their doorstep now.
No, and they're in an accommodation service as well. So that then obviously has to be, the person needs to be supported on that day that they were previously going out as well. So there will be implications for the service provider as well. And
we've heard from the government's own figures that they are looking to cut this precise area of funding by 50%. And that cut will mean the removal of about $13 billion from people and their support plan in that specific area over the next 4 years. And that cut will apply to participants who have already seen a reduction. So the participant you're talking about will have their social and community participation cut by a further 50%. What kind of impact do you think that will have on this person and the broader community?
So on the person, it's dire. I just want to acknowledge before I go any further that there are occasions where some people do access these supports who may or may not need them, where there are other people who absolutely need it. I just want to be open about that, because there has been a lot of discussion around people receiving supports in their plan, but it is in the minority. It would be in the minority of people who receive supports that they may not need in this particular category. For this particular person, it'd be catastrophic. And we heard earlier about unintended consequences. This is one of those that I've mentioned before. We moved away from an era of institutions. If this was to go left unchecked and people ended up being, to your question, at home most or all of the time, it's hard to argue that looks much different from the old days of institutions in terms of not being able to be in the community. And it is not the intent. That would not be the intent of the scheme. We are encouraged by the language and the comments around people with intellectual disability being at the core of the scheme and a priority of the scheme. But what we've now seen with this particular piece of legislation is that this unintended consequence of the person we're talking about and many other people who are in exactly the same situation. I also worry for young people who, to use an example, a young person who may have be 1 year into post-school. They may have been on their journey of exploring the community, forming a view about what they want their life to be, making headway in that, making progress in that. And then once these cuts come through in its entirety, it has the effect of that person then having to rein in their aspiration and rein in the opportunity and their ability to understand what they could potentially do. So I have a concern. It blunts the aspiration of the scheme and the original intention of the scheme, which was that investment in people. So I only speak for people, in this context of this hearing about people with intellectual disability. Certainly blunts the aspiration for them if they're not able to do the things that they need to do to form that view and form a plan.
And given what we've heard is that this legislation, these cuts are not individualised. They're not focused on whether somebody may or may not have used their social and community participation supports. It doesn't matter whether you've used it all or you've never touched it. It'll go down by 50% at least. Given that kind of across the board ministerial cut that is enabled by this legislation, do you believe that the bill in its current form should pass?
Not without safeguards. There's been a lot of commentary through these hearings that it should further cuts. There should be predicated on whether it's other service jurisdictions or other safeguards being put in place. As it's being applied now, we couldn't support it without some assurances of safeguards that will make sure that people don't fall through the gaps that are forming quickly.
And you don't see that in the bill currently, those safeguards?
Not in regards to this specific thing. There are many things in the bill that I think are appropriate and I think should happen, and we've made progress, as we know. There's been some amendments already, but when it comes to this specific issue, that's problematic.
So in its current form, it shouldn't pass. It needs further work.
Yeah, it needs further work, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.